was, and this is the story of how my worthless inheritance became the center of a multi-million-dollar battle that tore my husband's family apart. But to understand how it all unfolded, we need to go back to where it started, with my grandmother's final gift and a secret she took to her grave. 6 months ago, I inherited my grandmother's beach house in a small coastal town in Florida. It wasn't much to look at, a weathered 2-bedroom cottage sitting on 5 acres of supposedly worthless beachfront land. The property had been in my family for generations, but time and hurricanes hadn't been kind to it. My father-in-law, Richard Thompson, a prominent real estate developer, never missed an opportunity to remind me of this fact. A money pit, he'd say at family gatherings, swirling his expensive scotch. You should cut your losses, Rachel. That land hasn't been worth anything in 50 years. My husband, Michael, would squeeze my hand under the table, silently supporting my decision to keep the property despite his father's constant criticism. We'd been married for 3 years, and throughout that time, Richard had made it clear that he didn't think his Harvard-educated son should have married a small-town girl who taught middle school science. What Richard didn't know was that my grandmother hadn't just left me a rundown beach house. She'd left me a letter, sealed in an envelope with instructions to open it only after the property was legally transferred to my name. The contents of that letter would change everything. My dearest Rachel, the letter began. If you're reading this, then the property is finally yours. What I'm about to tell you must remain secret until the right moment. Your grandfather didn't just buy this land for the beach house. He bought it because of what lies beneath. My grandmother went on to explain that my grandfather, a geologist in the 1960s, had discovered something valuable under the property. But before he could document his findings, he passed away suddenly. My grandmother, fearing that developers would take advantage of her if they knew, kept the secret for decades. At the bottom of the letter was a set of coordinates and a contact number for Dr. Elena Santos, a geologist my grandmother had apparently been in touch with before her death. Trust Elena, the letter concluded. She knows what to look for. I called Dr. Santos the next day. She agreed to conduct a geological survey of the property, but it would take time to arrange the necessary equipment and permits. If what your grandmother told me is correct, she said, we need to be very careful about how we proceed. For the next few months, I kept quiet about the letter and the upcoming survey. But Richard Thompson wasn't a man who gave up easily. He began stopping by the property unannounced, each time with a new concern about its condition. The foundation is probably shot, he'd say, kicking at the weathered steps. The salt air ruins everything out here. I'm just trying to help you avoid a disaster, Rachel. Then came the offers, first $50,000, then $75,000, each time presented as a favor to the family. I hate to see you burdened with this place, he'd say, his concern as fake as his wife's designer handbags. The pressure intensified when Richard's development company, Thompson Coastal Properties, announced plans for a luxury resort complex in the area. Suddenly, my father-in-law's casual visits became more frequent, his offers more aggressive. Everything came to a head at the annual Thompson family barbecue. It was a sweltering Sunday in July, and the entire family had gathered at Richard's waterfront mansion. I was in the kitchen helping my mother-in-law, Patricia, prepare the salads when I overheard Richard talking to Michael in the study. That property is holding up the entire development, Richard's voice carried through the half-open door. Your wife needs to be reasonable. I'm offering far more than that dump is worth. Dad, it's Rachel's inheritance, Michael replied firmly. She's not interested in selling. Not interested. Richard laughed coldly. What does a schoolteacher know about real estate development? That land is worthless without proper investment. The whole area is just sand and scrub brush. I stepped into the doorway, making my presence known. Richard's face shifted instantly into his practiced smile. Rachel, we were just discussing your beach house. I've been thinking, let's make it an even $100,000. That's more than generous for such a risky property. The entire family had drifted toward the study, drawn by the conversation. Richard's wife, Patricia, nodded enthusiastically. Think of what you could do with that money, dear. That house is just sitting there empty. I thought about my grandmother's letter, about Dr. Santos's quiet confidence when she reviewed the coordinates. The geological survey was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Actually, I said, keeping my voice calm, I've grown quite attached to the property. All those generations of family memories, some things are worth more than money. Richard's smile hardened. Memories don't pay property taxes, Rachel. Let me explain something about coastal real estate. He launched into a condescending lecture about property values and development potential, making sure everyone could hear him. That worthless shack is probably one storm away from collapse, he concluded. Sell it to me now for $100,000 and cut your losses. It's the smart play. The family watched, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncomfortable. My sister-in-law, Amanda, always eager to please her father, chimed in. Dad knows best, Rachel. He's been in real estate forever. I felt Michael tense beside me, ready to defend me, but I squeezed his hand. This was my battle. Thank you for the offer, Richard, I said quietly. I'll think about it. His triumphant smile told me he thought he'd won. He raised his glass to the room, to family looking out for family. As everyone moved to the patio for dinner, I checked my phone. A text from Dr. Santos had just arrived. Equipment in place. We start at 6 a.m. tomorrow. What we're looking for, it's there. I can feel it. I smiled, tucking my phone away. Richard Thompson thought he had all the cards, thought his money and influence could bulldoze any obstacle. But tomorrow would change everything, because sometimes the most valuable things are hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. What happened next would shake the Thompson family to its core, reveal decades-old secrets, and prove that sometimes the smallest pieces of land can hold the biggest surprises. But that's just the beginning of this story. I arrived at the beach house before dawn, watching as Dr. Santos's team quietly set up their equipment in the pale morning light. Ground-penetrating radar units, core sampling tools, and various monitoring devices transformed my grandmother's peaceful beachfront into something resembling a scientific expedition. We'll start with the coordinates your grandmother provided, Dr. Santos said, checking her tablet. The geological formation she described, if it's really there, it's incredibly rare. The sun was just cresting the horizon when the first results started coming in. Dr. Santos' expression changed as she studied the readings, her professional composure cracking slightly. Rachel, she called out, you need to see this. But before I could reach her, a familiar voice cut through the morning air. What the hell is going on here? Richard Thompson stood at the property line, his face darkening as he took in the scene. Behind him, Michael looked equally surprised. I hadn't even told my husband about the survey, knowing his father had ways of getting information out of him. Geological survey, I said calmly. Just doing my due diligence before considering any offers. Richard's eyes narrowed as he strode onto the property. This is ridiculous. You need permits for this kind of work. I'm calling the county. All permits are in order, Mr. Thompson, Dr. Santos interrupted, holding up a folder. Filed and approved last month. We're completely legal. The sound of tires on gravel announced more arrivals. Amanda and Patricia stepped out of a luxury SUV, followed by Richard's brother Robert, who sat on the board of Thompson Coastal Properties. News traveled fast in the Thompson family. Dad said you were up to something suspicious, Amanda started, but her voice trailed off as one of the technicians called out excitedly. Dr. Santos. The core samples. You need to see this immediately. We all watched as Dr. Santos hurried over to the sampling station. She examined something through a magnifier, then looked up at me with wide eyes. It's exactly what your grandfather predicted. This is extraordinary. What is it? Richard demanded, trying to maintain his authoritative tone despite the growing uncertainty in his voice. Dr. Santos stood, brushing sand from her knees. Mr. Thompson, are you familiar with rare earth elements? The color drained from Richard's face. In that moment, I knew he understood exactly what this meant. Rare earth elements, crucial components for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles, and according to Dr. Santos' equipment, my worthless property was sitting on one of the largest deposits on the East Coast. That's impossible, Richard sputtered. All the surveys we did. The surveys your company did 15 years ago, I asked quietly, when my grandfather first discovered this. Richard's head snapped up. The rest of the family looked confused, but guilty recognition flickered across Richard's face. You knew, I continued. That's why you've been so desperate to buy this land. You knew what my grandfather found before he died. The next hour was chaos. More core samples confirmed the initial findings. The deposit was massive, incredibly pure, and, most importantly, legally mine. Robert Thompson was already on his phone with their company's lawyers. Amanda was crying, probably realizing her father wasn't as infallible as she'd thought. Patricia kept muttering about family loyalty while shooting accusatory glances my way. But it was Michael's reaction that mattered most to me. My husband stood silently for a long time, looking between me and his father. Finally, he walked over and took my hand. "How long have you known?" he asked softly. "Grandmother's letter told me what might be here," I replied. But I needed proof before saying anything. "Your father, he has a way of making things disappear." Michael nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The mysterious zoning changes that killed Grandfather Martinez's development. The environmental study that disappeared when the Wilsons tried to build their marina." "That's enough," Richard roared, his carefully maintained facade cracking. "This changes nothing. Thompson Coastal Properties has contracts, arrangements. With the county board?" I interrupted. "The same board that received an anonymous file this morning detailing 15 years of suspicious real estate dealings. Or did you mean your arrangements with the Environmental Inspection Office?" Richard's face went from red to white. "You wouldn't dare try to stop my survey, falsify reports, pressure my family?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. "Everything's already been documented and filed with multiple agencies. This time, Richard, you can't make it disappear." The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, mining companies, and environmental impact studies. The rare earth deposit made national news. Multiple companies approached me with extraction rights offers, each more lucrative than the last. But I had one condition for any deal. The beach house would remain untouched, preserved as my grandmother had kept it. Richard tried everything to regain control. He threatened lawsuits, claimed old mineral rights, even attempted to have the property rezoned. But with the spotlight of national media on the story, his usual tactics failed. His carefully cultivated image as a respectable businessman crumbled as reporters dug into his past dealings. Thompson Coastal Properties stock plummeted as investors fled. The luxury resort project collapsed. Richard was forced to resign as CEO, though everyone knew it was really the board firing him. The mighty Thompson empire, built on secrets and manipulation, was falling apart. The final blow came from his own family. Robert, tired of living in his brother's shadow, turned state's evidence about years of questionable business practices. Amanda, finally seeing her father clearly, took a job across the country. Even Patricia filed for divorce, unwilling to face social humiliation as Richard's past came to light. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of my grandmother's beach house. My beach house, watching the sunset. The property looked much the same, though now a state-of-the-art mining operation ran quietly in the background, using new environmentally friendly extraction methods. The profits would fund educational foundations, environmental conservation, and scientific research, causes my grandmother and grandfather would have supported. Michael joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "Dad called today," he said quietly. "Asked if we consider letting him apologize in person." I thought about it, remembering all the times Richard had looked down on me, had tried to bully and manipulate me. But I also thought about my grandmother's final lesson that true wealth isn't just about what's beneath the surface, but about how you use what you find. "Tell him he's welcome to visit," I said finally. "But remind him, this house isn't for sale, not for any price." Michael smiled, understanding perfectly. We sat together as the stars began to appear, the gentle sound of waves mixing with the distant hum of machinery. My grandmother's beach house stood proud and strong, a testament to patience, integrity, and the power of keeping faith in what you believe. The property that Richard Thompson had dismissed as worthless now produced materials vital to modern technology. But its real value wasn't in the rare earth elements beneath the sand. It was in the lesson it taught, that sometimes the most precious things are the ones others underestimate, and that true worth isn't always visible to those too arrogant to look deeper. Today, the beach house remains in our family, a reminder that some things are worth more than money. The mining operation has become a model of sustainable extraction, proving that progress doesn't have to destroy the past. And Richard? Last I heard, he'd moved to a small condo in the city, humbled but perhaps finally learning that real estate isn't just about property. It's about respecting the land and its history. As for me, I still teach middle school science, but now I have a pretty amazing field trip location where students can learn about geology, environmental responsibility, and the importance of standing up for what you believe in. My grandmother would have liked that. Sometimes I walk along the beach at sunset, just as she used to do, and I think about her letter, her faith in me, and the secret she protected for so long. In the end, she gave me more than just a valuable piece of land. She gave me the strength to stand my ground and the wisdom to know that some inheritances are worth more than their weight in rare earth elements. The Thompson family learned the hard way that true value isn't always in glossy development plans or luxury resorts. Sometimes it's in a weathered beach house, passed down through generations, holding secrets that can only be discovered by those patient enough to look beneath the surface and wise enough to respect